I hope that when the Prime Minister looks at the economy today, he demonstrates more sensitivity and vision and sees more than simply buying opportunities. Especially because, looking at the TSX, anyone that took his advice on October 7th would have lost around 10% on the market by now.
The credit crisis affects some of the largest employers in the country. This crisis is occurring at the worst possible time when the downward spiral of stock markets has been reducing the value of the pension funds of many companies. Luckily, thanks to sound management by previous Liberal governments, our public pension plan is on solid ground. Fortunately, Canada did not listen to the current Prime Minister when, as economic advisor to the Reform Party, he recommended the end of the Canada Pension Plan. Mr. Speaker, it is true that the Conservative government inherited from the Liberal government a pension plan, a banking system, financial and economic health that was unprecedented in the history of Canada. It took 3 years of Conservative government to dilapidate that inheritance. This throne speech, like the two previous ones, falsely attributes the merit of Liberal achievements to this Conservative government. If at least the government was proposing new solutions to today's difficulties, this government has to go beyond generalities that it keeps on repeating and must explain specifically how it intends to give companies the flexibility they need to remain profitable while guaranteeing pensions to which Canadian workers are entitled.
And the bottom line is this. In less than 3 years, the government has destroyed the $13 billion surplus that it inherited from the previous Liberal government. The government is now talking about a deficit. This deficit will not be the result of the global economic crisis. The Liberal government managed a surplus during the Asian financial crisis, after 9/11, in the face of SARS. Mr. Speaker, this deficit would be the responsibility of the Conservative government, of this finance minister, of this prime minister.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Speaker, who's responsible for this deficit? This Conservative government, this Minister of Finance, this Prime Minister.
It is the Conservative government that decided not to cut taxes in a way that would stimulate the economy and boost productivity. It is this Conservative government that became the highest spending government in Canadian history. The government earned that title in both 2007 and 2008.
Beat their own record.
By next fiscal year, the government is on track to have increased government spending by 25% from 2005 to 2006. That is more than $40 billion in new spending every year. This government may be conservative, Mr. Speaker, but it is certainly not fiscally conservative.
This government, which is very conservative from an ideological standpoint, is certainly not conservative when it comes to managing public finances.
To the point of eliminating the contingency reserve that acted as a buffer, helping keep Canada out of deficit during challenging economic times. The Prime Minister said repeatedly during the election that he anticipated an economic downturn. If he saw it coming, why did he spend the surplus? But more importantly, if he saw it coming, why did he spend the contingency reserve? The government decided and made the decision to leave no buffer, no room to maneuver, to ensure that in economic downturn, the government of Canada would spend more money than it was bringing in, to ensure that in an economic downturn, Canada would be in deficit.
Shameful.
Last month, the Prime Minister said that he will never run a deficit and that talk on a deficit was, and I quote, ridiculous. He said that last month. Mr. Speaker, it is actually the government that looks ridiculous today. During the election, the government misled Canadians about the possibility of a deficit. Now, with this strong speech, the government is trying to mislead Canadians about the cause of a deficit. It is their responsibility, it is their record. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the official opposition can count on a solid caucus which will never stop questioning the government about its choices and its record. We will do everything we can to protect the jobs, pensions, and savings of Canadians. We will do everything we can so that budgetary discipline continues to be a fundamental principle. That is what Canadians are demanding in these hard economic times, and that is what the official opposition intends to offer.
The official opposition does not intend to use this occasion to bring this government down.
Of course not.
But we do want to offer some advice and test the government's assurances of goodwill. To that end, and using some of the Prime Minister's own words, spoken in the House of Commons on October 6, 2004, when he was leader of the opposition in a minority government, I move, seconded by the honourable member of King's Hands, that the motion now before the House be amended by changing the period to a comma and adding the following. And we urge Your Excellency's advisors to respect the results of the election in which more than 60% of voters supported members of Parliament in the opposition. To bear in mind that people express their wishes as much through the opposition as through the government.
His words.
To recognize that Canadians rightfully expect the House of Commons they just elected to function in a less partisan, more constructive and collaborative manner, with the first responsibility for setting a better tone being that of the government, which requires the government to be more forthcoming than it had been up to now. And to that end, given the crucial nature of the upcoming economic and fiscal update, to provide representatives of opposition parties with a detailed briefing by appropriate senior officials, at least 3 hours in advance of the public presentation of the update, so all members of Parliament can be properly equipped to deal with the serious economic difficulties confronting Canadians. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.